Hi, Caleb from Brownells here, and in today's build video, we're going to be building a 1022 Takedown. So the Takedown is going to be built on a Brownells BRN-22 Takedown Receiver. So if you're not familiar with these, it's just like the Ruger 1022, except the barrel will quick detach from it, so you can store it or transport it, do whatever you need to do. Nice, compact, little 22 setup. And this one in particular does have a railed top receiver with an integral 1913 rail, so you can mount your favorite optic on there. Okay, so I believe everything needed is there. Yep, so we'll just take this box, get it out the way. All right, so parts we're going to be using. We have that BRN-22 receiver, of course. We're going to be using this Tactical Solutions Takedown Barrel. It has sights built onto it and stuff. We'll kind of get to that in more detail when we start installing it. A Powder River Precision fire control group. I like this one because it's an upgrade over the factory one, but it's not too expensive. So you can get a nice upgraded fire control group without really breaking the bank. And something I'm kind of excited about because I've never used it before, but it's the Midwest Industries chassis for the 1022 Takedown. So with that, we're going to be using some AR-15 parts, like we're going to throw a B5 stock on there, mil-spec receiver extension, and a Bravo Company grip. So we'll get to those shortly, but let me go ahead and start doing a little bit of unboxing here. I'll do this Midwest Industries chassis first, and there's a bunch of instructions in the box, but I'm sure we can figure it out. Like I said, I haven't done one of these yet. I'm pretty excited to do it. And then as far as the other components go, we're going to be using a Brownells stainless bolts. We're going to be using a little bit of an upgraded bolt buffer, and I'll show you those when we go to install them. Let me just get all this stuff cut open here without cutting myself open, ideally. And there's some extra screws there. All right. I say extra screws. They're not extra screws. We're gonna need them. There's only one set. All right. Got that. Some Loctite in there. And this is the actual chassis that mounts to the receiver. And then this is the fore end. Pull all our hardware out of here. Alright. And that's the fore end right there. So looking at this, we might have to remove the sights on the barrel. I'm not sure yet, but we'll burn that bridge when we get there, alright? Alright, I got my hardware set out, all that stuff. I'll put my knife up before I cut myself. And open this trigger group here. And that comes out in one nice solid piece. And I want to point out, it does also include an upgraded extractor to put on your bolts. We're not going to be using it because we're using the Brownells bolt, which already technically has an upgraded extractor installed on it. So we can just set that aside. And then this will set neatly with the rest of the packaging. Alright, and we just need to open up this barrel here. Getting the full unboxing experience. Like some BRN-22 ASMR. Start whispering the whole process. I'm just absolutely going to destroy this packaging. Alright. And all the hardware is already installed. It couldn't be any easier. That's nice. It comes with that front takedown screw, which is great if you're using a more traditional type stock with it, but we're not going to need it for this chassis, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull it out. Just unscrewed that screw right there, and I'm going to set it aside. Alright, so let's get started. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and install the bolts, the charging handle, and the buffer inside of this receiver. And to do that, I'm going to take my charging handle here, facing out of the ejection port. I'm going to go into that ejection port. And if you can see the back of that rod, it's going into a notch in the back of the receiver. That's where that's going to live, right there. And we just push the rest of the charging handle in, and it just sits right there. So this process is exactly the same as any other 1022 build or BRN-22 build if you've done those before. Alright, so what we need to do at this point is push this charging handle all the way back. So we're gonna take it, we're gonna push it back, because this notch in the top of our bolt is that's where that charging handle is gonna lock in, and we have to install the bolt at the back of the receiver. Okay, so that charging handle has to be back, and this part can be a little tricky. I'll try to do this the best way so we can both see it here. I'll get it back and then I'll show you, because trying to do it while you're watching is difficult, because if you can see it, I can't see it. Alright, so there we go. That should be all the way back right there. We're going to take our bolts just like this and drop it in, and it looks like we need to go back a little further. Alright, and you'll feel it snap into place, and then you can let it go forward, and now your bolt's installed. Alright, so that buffer I was talking about is this rubber piece right here. So the factory Ruger one is usually made out of metal, and that just drops right in, but we're going to be using this upgraded like rubber. This one's made out of a rubber material, because all it does really is it just serves a place for the bolt to run into when it's cycling. And this one's quieter than that metal on metal contact one. And that's it. So what I do is I take a piece of sandpaper. This is a 400 grit. I'm going to set it on the table. And I'm just going to bevel. I'm going to do it lightly because I actually already did this one. I'm going to put a bevel on one end of this buffer. I'm just going to twirl it, bevel it. Then I'm going to do a tapered flat on one side of it. And for that, you just rub it back and forth. Alright. Wipe it off, and then you just go into the large hole in the back of the receiver, beveled in first. And actually, I use a little bit of lube for this. I'm using the Wilson Combat Grease, which works great on everything except Wilson Combat handguns. That's the only thing it does. I'm kidding, it works great on everything. Alright, let me grab my rag. I had another rag here, and then I threw it on the floor with everything else I was throwing on the floor. Alright, there we go. So we're just going to push this in as far as it'll go by hand. And the reason we put that bevel on it is because when you go through one side and you start going through the other side, it tends to stop against the receiver and bend, but we want it to follow the hole, right? So we're just going to press it, and I'll actually use the nylon side of my Brownells hammer and a bench block. And yep, it went through the other side. That looks nice. It's still sitting up a little bit here, so I'll use a slightly undersized punch and just give it a little tap. And that's perfect. Okay. So with that being in there, we also can't get the bolt out, so it retains the bolt. Alright, so now we can go ahead and install our trigger group. And for that, so we line those up just like so. Insert our pins, which will drop right in. Just going to push them flush like that. And then do the same thing with the rear pin. If for whatever reason your pin gets hung up or you can't get it all the way through, if you pull your bolt back slightly, that usually relieves enough to get them in there, just like that. And I'm just gonna tap this one flush in the back here. There we go. Okay. Now we can go ahead and drop this into our chassis. Alright, so we're going to take it, and if you notice, there's a slot that's cut out in the back right here. That is going to go and hook around that shelf right inside the receiver there. Just like that. And this one fits in without moving the safety, but if you're going into a more traditional stock or some other chassis, you just like the standard Ruger 1022, you got to kind of put that safety in the middle position when you insert them, but that wasn't an issue with this setup. Alright, so from here, what we'll do is open up our hardware. Alright, and this front screw is what holds the receiver into the chassis. Alright, so when you insert this screw here, another thing to make sure is that your receiver is pushed back far enough so that your holes line up. And then from there, it just threads right in. And we'll torque this to 55 inch-pounds. Right there. Alright. Okay, so now we need to install the supporting hardware, if you will. We're going to remove both screws from this adapter piece, and this adapter is to fit an AR-15 grip. Alright, so this last screw I removed, the larger screw, this one's going to face rearward just like that. Okay, so this curve will go against your trigger guard, and then your grip's going to install on the back. So we're just going to move this screw out the way. That first screw we removed is going to come in from the top, right there. And this one, we're just going to tighten, and we're going to torque it down to 35 inch-pounds. Right there. Alright, so now we can install the pistol grip. Further observations have determined that we are not going to be able to use this one because it has that beaver tail on it, and that doesn't fit with this chassis. So that's okay. There's plenty of AR-15 grip manufacturers out there that make them without. Bravo Company is one of them. They have one without a beaver tail, but I didn't have one of those handy. So what we're going to be doing is switching to this B5 that doesn't have one. Alright, so we'll just set the grip on, and we will install our screw. Alright, and I have the torque driver in there, but I'm not even really going to torque it down. I'm not going to observe the measured torque, I should say. I'm still torquing it down. I'm just snugging it up nice and good there. Alright, then we can take that on out in multiple pieces. Alright, and now the grip is installed. So now we just need to install the stock assembly. So what we do for that, we're going to use our standard AR-15 receiver extension, or buffer tube if you will, and we're just going to thread it in. Standard AR-15 receiver threads, 1 3/16 by 16 I think it is, and we're just going to thread that in. As far as it'll go, that's as far as it'll go, so then we're going to back off, then run the castle nut up against it. And before we torque down that castle nut, there's a small hole on the bottom of the chassis back here. That goes into the groove cut on the bottom of your receiver extension. So I'm not going to use that one, I'm going to use a ball end. Alright, and we'll just snug that up like so. And then from here we'll tighten down our castle nut. To do that, I'm just going to hold the receiver in a vise here. And we're not going to put much torque on it at all. Just use a standard A or a wrench. And for this I'm using a Midwest Industries wrench with the Midwest Industries receiver here. And we'll just snug that up. Doesn't take much. You don't need to tighten this. I would say you don't need to do as much as you would a standard AR-15. Okay, and then from here you can take your stock. For this we're using the B5 stock as well. So we'll just push it on there, pull our latch straight out, and slide on. And it locks into place. Alright, so that is it for the back end. Now we can go ahead and start getting that barrel assembly put together. Alright, so as I mentioned before, we might have to do some sight removal. Let's take a look here and see. We'll just slide our handguard on from the front. And yeah, so that rear sight is going to be in the way. So we're just going to go ahead and pull it off. I'm probably just going to leave the front sight on just because I don't have a plug screw for where we're going to take it out. So we're just going to remove that rear one. Alright, and to remove it, if you notice there's a screw on top. That's the elevation adjustment screw. And we're just going to run it all the way out. Alright, and then if you look down there, there's another screw underneath that. That's what holds the sight to the barrel. So we'll pull that out as well. Alright, and then we'll just take that rear sight off and slide this on again. And I will note that on that rear sight, if you're using this barrel, it is on there with blue Loctite, so they use quite a bit of it, so you may need to put a little bit of heat on it. Alright. So this slides on perfectly now. What we need to do, I'll get this stuff out the way. And in this hardware pack, there is a screw that we're going to put on here. Let's see. Looks like about a 30 seconds. Okay. Alright, and actually we'll use our torque driver, and we'll just line up the hole in the handguard with the hole in the barrel and drive that screw in, and we're going to torque this to 35 inch-pounds. Okay, there we are. Now, alright, so we're going to go to that 35 inch-pound. And there we have it. The handguard is now on the barrel with the takedown latch here. Now we need to get this barrel set up and adjusted to a receiver. So to do that, I'm just going to take our bolt here and lock it to the rear. Like so. Then we're going to take our receiver, and if you notice there's some hardware in the front here. That's going to lock into the hardware on the barrel. Alright, so we're going to take it, insert the barrel. If you notice there's a flat cut on the bottom of the barrel right here. That's going to go against that flat there. All right, and then you're gonna push it in and twist to lock. All right, and that's how it's gonna be set up. But what we need to do is adjust this ring so that this receiver is now set up with this barrel so that we have a nice snug fit. So what we're gonna do is pull this takedown lever, twist, and because of this receipt, like the way this handguard fits across, you can't do it while it's on the gun, so we're gonna take it off, and all I'm gonna do is turn this ring counterclockwise. Then I'm gonna check my fit and repeat the process until I have a nice tight fit. It's still pretty snug there. It's pretty much all the way, so I'm gonna come out almost as far as I can. All right, let's see where we're at. All right, and I got it adjusted so that when I push down, there's a little bit of resistance before it locks in. So now everything is nice and tight. You're gonna have a nice, accurate rifle because you have a nice fit between your barrel and your receiver. So now we can release our bolts. And that's all there is to it. So as far as magazines go, you can use whatever you want. You can use the factory Ruger 10 round, 25 round, whatever you got. And for optics, you can mount whatever optic you want because of this 1913 rail. So scope, red dot sights, whatever. And you have all these M-LOK areas up here as well. It comes with an M-LOK 1913 rail. So you can attach flashlights, lasers, whatever you want to do there. So yeah, that's all there is to it. And you also have a bunch of QD points for QD slings. So a nice ergonomic little versatile 22 here. All right. So if you have any questions or comments and you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to post them down below. If you have favorite parts you'd like to use on 22 builds, let us know. And if you're watching this on the website, you need help, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.